am John Ferguson. I am the writer and creator of the Saltire comics, and I'm also the managing director of Diamond Steel Comics that publishes the Saltire comic books, graphic novels. A specific article that I've read pertained that this was impossible, that Scotland couldn't have its own superhero, but it was too drab, too dreich, too boring. This gave me inspiration to create exactly what this article said couldn't be done, and spent about 6 months developing what would be the character and the world that it's set in, and decided that rather than publish this through someone else, that we would like to keep creative control of this, and so started Diamond Steel Comics, who have now published the first book, Saltire Invasion, which has just come out. The process was quite an interesting one. Essentially, we wrote a backstory, we wrote a script, which we thought was good. Then, of course, the $64,000 question in comic books is, who's then going to create the art for this? And that is always where people come up against brick walls. They find an artist, but they're not able to create 64 pages, 52 pages, 96 pages of complete art. So we decided to approach Duncan of Jordanstone Art College, which is part of Dundee University, who are one of the few places in the world who have comic book studies as a course. And we approached Philip Vaughan, who runs that course, and asked the question, could you point us in the direction of an artist and a colourist and a letterer who can help us create the finished product? And he was very interested in seeing it. The idea of something Scottish appealed to him, and we approached his student body, and they were quite keen, and we decided that the best way to do it would be through a competition. So we created a competition through the university where anyone could enter to create the visual content of Saltire, some concept art for this main character, and some pages from this finished script. And when the entries came back, there were actually two artists who jumped out for different reasons. One was incredibly beautiful and one was incredibly dynamic, and we thought, oh, imagine if you could take the best of those two and put them together, wouldn't this be fantastic? And they work together. They work in animation at the moment as a team. They know each other, they work together. And I said, well, can you make a comic book together? Is that possible? If you take the best of this and the best of this and put it together, can we create what we think would look fantastic? And he said, yeah, and there is no reason why not. They can work as a team. If they're up for it, then yes, that could work. So Gary Welsh and Tony Oscar, who are in their final year at Duncan of Jordanstone, became the artistic team behind Saltire Invasion, and they took the beauty of the aspects of Scotland, which are very different from what you normally see in the traditional superhero genre of DC Comics and Marvel Comics, and took the dynamism of the main character Saltire and created something that we were more than happy with. The feedback from reviewers and fans has been fantastic, and we hope to use them going forward in the next volume and the ones beyond that as well. So they are now, if you like, the artistic team behind this concept. The writing of it is, I find it really fun. There's no pressure to take it off in certain directions because we have complete creative control. It's also based in a world that I know and understand. It's Scotland. I'm Scottish. I've lived in Scotland my whole life, worked in Scotland my whole life, and I'm very interested and passionate about Scottish history and mythology as well, which I think is a part of Scotland that's a little bit forgotten. So it was a matter of taking the best aspects of Scottish culture and the best parts of Scottish history. The bits that you'd circle and go, oh, that's a cool thing that happened. And the best parts of Scottish mythology, the most interesting parts. Some of the unknown parts as well, because we have different mythologies from the islands, from the highlands, from the lowlands, even from the east to the west, throughout our history. And so it was a matter of taking a lot of those different aspects and then moulding the mythology into the history with a good narrative as well, revolving around this Saltire character who was a protector of the entire country and population. And so putting that together, you do find yourself going off on tangents, but you eventually mould together, because you're always kept in the confines of Scotland and its history, that you find yourself very easily coming back to, well, what actually happened in Scotland's history? This is how it actually ended. But we can tweak that a little bit, make it more interesting, more dynamic, more fun. And so I find writing it absolutely fantastic, because we can position it any time from ancient history to medieval history to modern day into futuristic stuff. So if you have areas of the plot you want to expand, it can be done by picking something straight out of a textbook that happened in Scottish history or straight out of my imagination. So from that point of view, I find the writing really fun. Yes, I mean, obviously the financial constraints we took on board very early on. There's a lot of people who want to make a book, write a book, make a comic book, graphic novel, whatever. It's a lot of people's dream. It's a bit like people say, I'm a musician, I'm going to make my own album, but it never happens because there are financial implications there. And I'd been, I feel like, saving, for this dream of making this comic book. And we decided that when we went for the competition to Duncan Johnson, we would make it very clear there was going to be a prize, and that would be financial. We made sure the artists got paid, the going rate for illustrator and colourist. We made sure that the letterer got the going rate, the cover artist got the going rate. And yes, that was a financial outlay for us, and it meant that we had to look at it as a commercial venture as well and say, well, we've outlaid X amount of pounds, and hopefully we will not lose all of those pounds. Maybe we'll make something back, because the idea of Saltire is that he's going to be a long-running character. He's going to be around for a long time in a lot of books, and to make books 2, 3, 4 and 5, we need to get some of that back. Luckily, the response from people has been very good. The fans have really enjoyed it. They've bought into the concept of having a superhero from Scotland, which is fantastic. But it is the major concern. A lot of people, I think, don't take into account that if you go to a publisher with an idea, they kind of want it finished. They kind of want to see what you've got. They kind of want to see what you do. They don't want the idea in your head, unless you're established. They won't take that. So we knew that we had to have a finished, rendered book on a bookshelf somewhere before we took it any further. And it meant we were precise in how we approached every aspect of it. There were monetary, concerns, and there were timescale concerns as well. And so when we approached the art team, we made it clear that we would be liaising with them every single week. I want to see each page as it's done. We want to check, the content. Is it going to work? Is this visually how we see this coming across? We don't want it too cartoony. We don't want it too glitzy and, if you like, Americanized. We love, the American comic book market, but this is a Scottish story, so it had to look Scottish as well. And we knew that would work, rather than just going, look, we've recreated another Spider-Man or Batman. That was never going to work. It's already been done, and it's been done brilliantly. So from that point of view, we knew that there were parameters we wanted to work within, and we would go forward and try and make it then commercially successful, because we knew it was good. We could back it and go, we think this from the first page to the last page is really good. And I think that's, if you like, if there's ever anyone wanted to ask the question, that would be it. Go out and create something that's really good, and actually create it, not just the idea in your head, but if you create it, make sure you take your time. I mean, we took the best part of a year from approaching Phil to published book on a shelf. It was a year. So it's not something you do quickly, but we found it very, very, you know, fun and rewarding, and you know, we really look forward to getting involved, sort of really from now on in book 2. You know, we're in that process now. So although book 1's just hit the shelves, we've moved on, and in our head we're kind of thinking, right, we've got to market book 1, but make book 2 so that people, because we've already got people going, when's the next one? But the artists still need to put, you know, the pencil on the page. So from that point of view, it's been great. I mean, Scotland has 5 million people, 5.5 million people in it. You know, so it's got a reasonable population, but there is a huge Scottish population and an affinity with Scotland, that if you like, the world over. You know, you meet people from all over Europe who love the Scotsman, if you like, and you go to Australia, Canada, America, New Zealand, South Africa, all these, if you like, the New World type countries, and there's a massive expat Scots population around the world. So it was a matter of trying to find something that these people could embrace, but very much not trying to say, but somebody from London or somebody from Belfast or Dublin or, you know, Paris or wherever would pick this up and just go, I can't relate to this, I'm not Scottish, I don't have Scottish heritage. It is the story of a legend, if you like. It's a modern legend. You know, it's a story that sounds like it would have been told in the past, and that I think people will always have an affinity with, as well as the natural underdog story that Scotland has as a nation. You know, from the invasions of Rome and the Vikings and the Saxons and the Normans and so on and so forth. It's been a series of attempted conquests that Scotland has managed to fall back on and say, no, we want to keep ourselves as ourselves. And that, I think, people, funnily enough, particularly comic book fans, you know, they like to back the underdog, and the superhero story is often about that notion of you're fighting against something greater and trying to keep, if you like, a freedom, whether it's about an individual, whether it's about, you know, a group of people, or whether it's about a country, which is the Scottish story. That, I think, resonates with a lot of people, whether they're Scottish or not Scottish. We know Scottish people like it, but we believe that, you know, people outside Scotland would too. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There are obviously, you know, organisations that creative people, you know, whether it be in literature or, you know, in art, in film, in music, that they can go to. There are a variety of organisations they can go to for funding. Whether they are up to date on, you know, the modern way of thinking, what the next generation coming through are into. You know, they spend more on computer games than they do on music, film and television put together. But it still seems like a kind of second-class citizen in terms of art. You know, a guy who made a computer game just made a computer game, didn't create art. I would beg to differ. Just like a guy who creates a graphic novel, to create that quality of art over 50 pages, 100 pages, to me is more impressive than somebody doing some fine art that took them a year and sticking it up in a gallery and charging £100,000 for it, in my opinion, and I'm sure people would disagree with that, but it is another one of those, well, it's a second-class citizen to what, you know, is real art, and I think they could learn a lot by just stopping and taking a minute and seeing what people in this generation and the generation after that are going to be interested in coming through, because, you know, their idea of art is different, you know, and it is in the eye of the beholder at the end of the day. So whatever they see as being artistically with merit, that's what's relevant, not what a board of directors of, you know, company X who have some money to give out sees, because I think it's important that we back the next generation coming through. A lot of them do see creative pursuits, particularly in Scotland, as a way forward, and backing those people, I think, is very important. We certainly were lucky enough to have, if you like, our own funding, but it's not just about financial backing. Sometimes it's about having access to expertise or equipment or contacts, and that kind of backing needs to really be revamped within Scotland. It would really help, because there are a lot of projects out there which never see the light of day, or don't quite become what they should have become, because who was there to help them? And really that's an aspect of I feel like the political sphere that I think that Scotland in general should look at, because we shouldn't all have to travel to America or London and follow Grant Morrison and Mark Miller. We should be able to enjoy Scotland and create something that the world can then enjoy. It feels great. I mean, we are really chuffed because we know of Scotland's history in comic books, and I mean the world knows of Scotland's history in comic books because it's not a Scottish thing. The Dundee, the Beano, Dennis the Menace and Gnasher and Desperate Dan, you can say those words to Australians and Americans and basically anyone in the English speaking world, and they know exactly who you're talking about. And you're right, those are, if you like, at least a generation, if not 2 generations ago, since they were, if you like, at their peak. And Scotland is in a different place now. Dundee's in a different place now as well. Dundee's on the up. Scotland is, I think, on the way up as a country. I think it's found itself again in the last sort of 10-15 years. And if we can be a part of that and reinvigorate comics, because I mean the creative people in Scotland are, in my opinion, second to none, but they tend to travel. They go to America, they go to London to find their way in the world. I mean, you look at the massive input they've had in comic books with the likes of your Mark Millers and Grant Morrisons. The big names in comic books are quite often Scottish, and not that we would put ourselves on that kind of level at all, but we believe, if you like, as a homegrown attempt. Saltire, when people see it on the shelves, they do see a character that they can relate to, because it's quite iconic. In the same way as Our Willie, the minute you see Our Willie, you know it's Our Willie. The minute you see Saltire, you don't need the name above it to say who it is. You go, oh yeah, that's that big giant blue ginger haired bearded superhero. There's no doubt who that is, and that's what we've been trying to create. So from that point of view, we're really happy that people have come back with that kind of response, and we know that from there it can grow, because once you've created something that is visually so appealing, we could go into children's stories, we can go into other aspects of merchandising, which will really just take the character out there without it being a written story, and that appeals to us as well. So the notion of Scotland and the fact that it's been downtrodden is probably the wrong word, but it's not really known itself for quite a few decades. It kind of lost a sense of itself. You find yourself reading about what is a pseudo-history of the past in the book, but it resonates now because you can see Scotland. You mentioned Dundee. This country itself, the cities in the country, are being reinvigorated, and in the book a lot of people are finding themselves with a little bit of it gives you a little bit of a puff in your chest, a little bit of excitement, your pulse will go up, that kind of thing. That's what you can hopefully find in the book. Not necessarily because you're Scottish. If you are Scottish, I think you'll find a sense of excitement in it, but if you're not, I think you would relate to the characters in the book anyway.